There's this video that resurfaced on Upworthy. It's from 2005. It's Warren Buffett and Bill Gates talking about taxes. They really make some good points here. Listen to this.
Would you support the United States adopting a flat income tax, and why or why not?
Well, I wouldn't support it. You'd be amazed how flat it is already. If you look at both the payroll tax, which is over 12% now, and that applies on the first $80,000 or $90,000 of income. So Bill and I pay practically none of that in relation to our income. The people that work for us, it's a big, big tax. So if you take the tax that my assistant or anybody in our office pays, they've got 12% on that first $80,000 or $90,000, and then they have the income tax. And their tax rate, literally, in many cases, is not, well, it's the same and maybe even higher than my own tax rate, since they cut the rate on capital gains to 15% and dividends to 15%. So what has gone on in this country in the last, well, in very recent years, is a huge benefit to the very rich, and not that much relief to people down below. And people, when you read about tax rates, they usually leave out the payroll tax, and they don't refer to this 12 and a fraction percent. So we have come, in my view, to a taxation system that's much too flat in this country, and frankly, I think that Bill and I should have a higher tax rate on the income we get. We pay a lot of taxes, but it's really at a very low rate, and it's a rate that's less than half the tax rate that I was paying 25 years ago when I was making a lot less money. They have really taken care of the rich.
Yeah, I go along with that wholeheartedly. I think we probably need a more progressive system as we look to balance the budget, that at some point I think people recognize that needs to be done. Probably one of the ways that will be done is that the rich should bear a somewhat higher proportion of the burden than they do today. Very large fortunes never go through an income tax. Maybe it's a little ironic, but both Warren and I would say things in several aspects of the tax system should be more progressive.
I could spend the rest of my life, and I could have done this 20 years ago, and actually pay no federal income tax, because I could have taken my Berkshire Hathaway stock, borrowed some money against it every year to live on, and when I died, then the estate would pay off the debt on it. But I could have gone through my life, a good bit of my life, without paying any income tax whatsoever. And I frankly think it's very unfair.
It was around that time frame that Warren Buffett issued a challenge to Wall Street CEOs. He said, if you could show me that you pay more in taxes as a percentage than your secretary does, I'll give you $1 million of my own money. Nobody was able to collect because nobody did pay a higher percentage in taxes than their secretary. Think about how out of whack that system is. So not only do we already have a flat tax-like system, it's actually in many ways regressive. Regressive, meaning the poor and the middle class pay more than the rich as a percentage. So think about capital gains, for example. The richest people in the country make all their money through investments in many cases. Mitt Romney is the perfect example of this. So he paid about 14% in taxes on $20 million in income. Now, why was he able to pay such a low rate? Because it's the capital gains rate, as opposed to somebody actually laboring for a living and working and using their hands and their brain. That person pays a higher rate because they have to pay the income tax rate as opposed to the capital gains rate. So in this example, the accountant and the teacher and the construction worker and the sales associate, they all pay more in taxes as a percentage than Mitt Romney, whether it's 20% or 30% that they pay on about 70 grand a year, when again, Mitt Romney 14% for about 20 million a year. Not to mention all of the tax loopholes and the tax havens where the rich dodge, whether it's Bermuda or the Cayman Islands or elsewhere. And have you ever noticed, if you don't pay your taxes, you're considered a tax cheat and you go to jail. But if a billionaire doesn't pay his or her taxes, well, then they're just using a tax haven, and it's always legal loopholes that they found a way to do it within the law, right? There's an amazing double standard there. But here's the even more important part about this. I always said that the flat tax is one of those things that might look appealing at face value to a lot of people because it just seems so simple. Okay, everybody pays 17% of your income and that's it, and call it a day. We don't need this, huge tax code book that has so many pages. And I agree with simplifying the tax code, but there's no way an actual flat tax could make sense, because think about it like this. It would amount to a colossal tax hike on the poor and the middle class, and it would be a massive tax cut for a lot of rich people. So if you make about 24 grand a year, 30 grand a year, and you're paying 17% of your money on that, that is a huge hit. You can't afford that hit. You can't afford to pay 17% of your income in taxes if you make 24 grand a year. But 17% of $657 million is nothing. You won't even realize it's gone. It'll be nothing. Which is why every modern industrial system has a progressive tax rate to a certain degree, and the U.S. is the most right-wing of all those systems. And oh, would you look at that, we also just happen to have the highest levels of income inequality. So Warren Buffett and Bill Gates are exactly right. They nailed it in that segment.